Hello, Roger Martin here from Billings, Montana, and I've been looking at this Antarctica-Atlantis connection for quite a while, and Corey Good as well as David Wilcock connection with this, as well as the Black Ops spaceship and other stuff going on, and the Antarctic history with the Germans and with Russia and with us and with other nations and the ruins down there. This is one of the most publicly viewed videos on this at all times, 1,600,000 plus. And I'm going to give you the link for this video. Let's look at some of this stuff here. This is with a scientist here, and Corey gets into some of this stuff. This stuff's been going on a long time. Listen to this.
Even back in 1993, I'm thinking, well, wait a minute. If our government, if you want to call it that, got these things and used them and could back engineer them, then why wouldn't they have taken off outside of Earth's atmosphere? Why wouldn't they have gone around our solar system? And then why wouldn't they want to land on some of these other places and figure out what was there? So, very early
They have.
along in my work, I was lucky enough to find the work of Richard C. Hoagland, who got into Mars. And this was the way the book looked when I first got it, back in, again, 1993. And it frickin' blew me away because I had heard from my buddy that he had done a presentation at the United Nations talking about the space on Mars that he's pointing to right here. That this is not just some trick of light and shadow, but in fact, as you see here, you have this artificial-looking face. It's clearly human-like with a headdress around it, next to what very obviously looks like a city of pyramids. So you notice there's some very, very pyramid-like things here, but let's take a look at kind of a side angle now. You see the face up at the top right, the pyramids down there on the left, and look down there on the right. That one down there is a five-sided pyramid called the D&M. And this is what it looks like from overhead. Do you think that's some kind of just random crater or mountain? No, come on. And also what we see is that the proportions of the human, the Vitruvian man, like Leonardo da Vinci drew, you spread your arms and legs out, that's what it looks like it's a human being. Now this thing is estimated to be 1.5 miles wide based on the size of the Mars orbiter frames. 1.5.
All right, we're going to get into some other things here. I'll give you a link for this, but there's too much going on here not to look at some of this stuff. Holy cow. I'm going to get into this and speed this up a bit. Cosmic Disclosures had a lot of this stuff on with Corey Good and others. Trying to get some of the good stuff here. 2 hours is too long for a lot of people. But they are mining in outer space. They have slave labor and machinery mining in different places, and they have cover-up things that look like asteroids. They're not. They're spaceships. Ton of stuff going on. Listen to this.
Because Asimov and Arthur C. Clarke are getting these little dribs and drabs of information, and they leak it through fiction. And this was how this all gets started. Now, the focus of the talk tonight is, of course, Antarctica. That's what you're here for. That's what has got our excitement right now. And this is one of the pictures. It's not really pyramids, but it's just a very cool couple of icebergs, which kind of sets the tone. This is taken in Australia, Antarctica. Woo! So we can see how beautiful it would be to travel down there. And it's not as cold as they lead you to believe. You're not dying when you're down there. If you go during the right time, the right season, you'll get these gorgeous, gorgeous sunsets. And this is actually a real picture. This is not photoshopped, of a yacht that was found underneath the surface of the ocean in Antarctica. Somebody didn't have very good luck. sailing during the wrong time. And to me, this kind of sets the stage for the ancient architecture and the things that we might see once we get down there. Why Antarctica? Because Antarctica is where the founding fathers of the people calling themselves the Illuminati supposedly crash landed when they came to Earth and became what the Bible calls the fallen angels. That's a very important point. They believe that the fallen angels are real, but that because the God of the Bible wiped out their people in Noah's flood, that God must be evil. Because this Adam, which is us, they call us the Adam, they think the Adam is wicked. And they think that they, with all their ancient knowledge and high technology that they crash landed here with, that they are the good guys. So they actually believe that they deserve to rule the earth and that we are not worthy. And so when I explained that bit to our Huffington Post journalist, David Seaman, that's when he got it. That's when he really saw, okay, this is why these people are so sadistic that stuff like Pizzagate is actually happening. Because
now there's elite people doing pedophiles and Pizzagate and all these other things. This is really going on worldwide, and there are people fighting against this type of stuff, both in Russia and the United States and other places, and it's going to come out, and these people are going to face tribunals in time. There's no two ways about it. Let's move on here.
My butt off, and we got it out on December 11th, and literally, I am not kidding. Well, this is the video that we made a few days later, and it was wildly successful, over 1 million unique views. So this really got out to the public big time. 2 hours after my article came out is when the first thing showed up. And, big plug here, if you go to dwilcock.com, the actual mixed and mastered MP3 of Endgame is available. You just put your email address in. It's free. You can listen to it in the car. It's awesome. And also, thank you. And it's really important to do those emails because they have been hacking my site like crazy.
So again, the elect people and people trying to control media, and I've been hacking David Wilcock's site and doing other things. But we're trying to push this stuff out so they don't have any choice but to bring some of it out themselves, because some of this stuff is going to come out. It's just a matter of time. But there is a tremendous battle going on with these elite people, controlling the media, controlling education, controlling politicians. And there's a tremendous war currently going on with this. So getting those emails in there, getting this stuff subscribed to, supporting this is important.
We had to turn off the entire discussion forum. We had to delete 10 years worth of, well, we have it in the hard drive on our server, but we had to take it offline, 10 years worth of everybody's discussions, because somebody put malware somewhere in there, and Google says, oh, your site links to malware, you must be hacked, oh, we're going to ban you. So this is how they take your site offline. All you got to do is have a discussion forum or a comment section, and one thing goes in, and you're done. 2 hours after we put this article out, tabloids start saying exactly the same thing, and it ended up on the front page of Drudge Report. Now, here's the shrinking reindeer from global warming, which is a sad story in and of itself. But then there it is in italics. The lost city of Antarctica, massive ancient civilization, lies frozen under ice. Holy shit.
So they're forced to play their hand and bring in some of this out in the Drudge Report and other things. And this stuff is accurate. You can go look for it. It's there.
2 hours after my article comes out? Is that a coincidence? Come on. No. This says the lost city of Antarctica. Shock claims massive civilization exists beneath a mile of ice. Antarctica is hiding a huge city underneath more than a mile of ice, according to incredible claims. December 11th. Artist's impression of a doorway to Atlantis. They're getting you ready. And we were told, you've got to get this out before you get scooped. And look, there it was, 2 hours later. Unbelievable. They talk about the Piri-Reis map, and they say, look, it's got the subglacial topography of Antarctica before they were supposed to know what it was. And they quote from Charles Hapgood, the original guy that had the theory that the Earth shifted on its axis in space. Antarctica was originally not on the pole, but it was tropical, and it moved. What they didn't get into was this interesting fact that you can look at Antarctica now, and if you look at the top of this image, it says subglacial lakes. So these blue areas are beneath the surface of the ice. The surface is all white and you just see ice. But if you go in there, they know that there are areas where there are lakes, meaning this warm water. And you can take a look and see where the lakes are, meaning this is where the continental masses are, and where two chunks of Antarctica, there's a big chunk on the right, a littler chunk on the left. We only knew that since 1958. There's another image of it in gray. But yet, here we have from 1754, the Buachi map from the Vatican showing Antarctica with a channel in between the middle right where those subglacial lakes are. So what the heck is going on here? They knew. Antarctica wasn't even discovered until the late 1800s. This is all going to be part of the disclosure. It was mapped back when it wasn't frozen. Back with the pre-Adamites. They copied this over from pre-Adamite books. That's how they got it. That's all part of the disclosure. Then the next day, December 12th.
So pre-Adamites, we need to understand that there are pre-Adamites, Adamites. There are Illuminati that think they're connected with pre-Adamites and have the right over Adamites or us.
12/12, important ritual date. The lost city of Antarctica. Shock claims massive ancient civilization.
Now 12/12, I don't know why that's important, but he seems to think that's an important date. But this stuff is coming out days after he released it, and this other stuff is coming out, which shows you that they have a tremendous control and watch over the media.
Civilization lies frozen beneath a mile of Antarctic ice and could even be Atlantis. Isn't that something? Just one day after we were rushed to publish this thing, and I broke my butt doing it. There it is. Now this is what it says in that article. Check this out. There's the link, so you can look it up yourself. Conspiracy theorists went wild earlier this year when a video claiming to be from the lost city emerged. Now wait a minute. Is anybody here realistically going to deny that I'm not one of the greatest conspiracy theorists of our era? I sell books, I do conferences, we've got a huge crowd here at Conscious Life. I'm definitely one of those people. I didn't go wild because there was no video. They make this stuff up. They're leaking a fake story. It's fake news, but it's actually getting us ready for something that's very real. This alleged video.
That's how they play the game, to get us ready for stuff that they want us to get ready for. They do fake and leak stuff out, but they play games with it. Always. It's all propaganda.
Nobody ever actually saw. They just say, oh, conspiracy theorists, but you don't know who they are. They don't post a link. They don't show you the video. They don't give you any way of seeing where this video is or who wrote about it. They don't link to one article of anybody who said anything about this. Oh, just take my word for it. Yeah, the conspiracy theorists went wild. It appeared to show extensive ancient ruins hidden in the ice and was a video supposedly left behind by a California TV crew who have been missing since 2002. Now, this is what's so crazy, and it's one of the things that we really have kicked ourselves for, is that Corey had told me, before they wrote this, that there were teams down there that had been embedded since 2002 filming the archaeological ruins, getting ready for this disclosure. They've been doing it.
So here again, there's Corey Good in his version of what's going on here. They've been video doing this, not Corey Good, but these other archaeological scientists have been videoing this since 2002. But he told us that they were doing that, Corey Good did, and it was going to come out eventually, but it would be their edited version of it after they cleaned it all up. So again, they've got this group that is unofficially doing things, preparing to clean it up, clean the ruins up, present their own version of it, their own twisted version of it, preparing us for that, but it's going to be their own twisted version. It's not going to be the truth with pre-Adamites and other things. It'll be a terrestrial version of it, their version of it, but it will be an edited version.
All that time, 14 years. And then this comes out a couple days later. I was kicking myself that we didn't leak that part of the intel in our article, because it was so amazing. So I put it in as an update after this happened. So that crew is still down there now. They've been making documentaries for 14 years, and notice it's the year after 9/11. They needed this plan in case the botched job of 9/11 got exposed. And then they need to get a get-out-of-jail-free card. They need to say, oh, well, look, everybody, yeah, we did some bad stuff, but hey, now we're going to give you something good. Can't you be nice? Can't we all kiss and be friends now? That's the cabal's plan. Now the Alliance wants to actually release this as part of a benevolent disclosure. The only thing we're disagreeing with them on is how fast we get it. But they're setting the stage for that real disclosure with this right here. So then it goes on to say, archaeologist Jonathan Gray claimed that the U.S. government is trying to block the video from being seen because it reveals there is a massive archaeological dig underway 2 miles beneath the ice. But that's not the wildest claim, with several online websites claiming, wait a minute, what website isn't online, dude? Online websites, It's not exactly well written. Several websites claiming that there is a city in Antarctica and Hitler knew about it, making it a secret Nazi base. Now look at this. What they're doing is they're setting up the release of this video. They're promising something they intend to deliver, folks. They intend to deliver a video that shows a massive archaeological dig 2 miles beneath the ice. That is going to happen. This is the proof. It happened right after we published our intel. Is this a coincidence? No way. Then in this same article, they say, oh, by the way, we just found a Nazi base in the Arctic, not Antarctica, but they show you a Nazi base in the Arctic. But then I did some research, and I start looking up, okay, let me just see if anybody else did something on Antarctica as Atlantis. The mainstream scientific journal known as Science, as good as it gets in academia, published this very strange thing in 1998. Check this out. There it is. There's the Science logo, AAAS. And look at the bottom. March 31st, 1998, ancient ruins found in Antarctica. Now the first clue that something's wrong here is you got this little image of a guy dressed up in old-fashioned Shakespearean clothing, and he goes, oh, please. Okay, but that's about the only clue you get at first, that something's wrong. Ancient ruins found in Antarctica in a mainstream scientific journal. And here's the text, which I'm now going to read to you. Check this out. From 1998. Argentina, that's the first clue something's wrong. Why would it be, and is there even a place called Dirac? Okay, it ends up being a spoof, but they're hiding things in jest. Scientists, this is in Science Journal, okay? Scientists have uncovered the remains of a massive stone structure and other artifacts estimated to be 4,000 years old in a remote corner of Antarctica. The find, announced at a press conference here today, is the first evidence of ancient civilization on the icy continent and is being hailed as one of the most important archaeological digs of the century. Working in dwindling light just before Antarctica's first sunset of the year in mid-February, a team led by geologist Scott Amundsen of Wyoming State University came across the rubble of a stone building roughly the size of Rome's ancient amphitheater. Interesting. One of my students tripped over a squat pentagonal block while we were hiking up near Doubleday Glacier, Amundsen says. And in fact, the briefings are saying that the melting of the ice in Antarctica is causing these buildings to poke out now. This is actually real. All the stuff they're telling you here is true. And they're preparing you for the disclosure that they might have done right after 9/11 if they needed it, which is why they sent those guys down in 2002. This was setting that up back in 1998, 4 years in advance. They knew what they were going to find. Doubleday, the glacier, has been receding at an estimated 3 meters per year for the last century, and the last geologic expeditions that they are going to talk about visited it in the 1920s. Previous researchers could have easily missed it, Amundsen says, because there wasn't very many of them. The team worked deep into March, well after the normal end of the field season. So far, the researchers have uncovered the foundations of a massive columned structure that may have stood as high as 30 meters, says group member Harvey Sampson, who last year had proved by DNA analysis that Piltdown Man was not an elaborate hoax, but in fact the skeleton of the murdered St. Nicholas, the last Russian Tsar. Science Now, April 1st, 1997. April 1st, April Fool. They loft the big middle finger. And it goes on, and they say all kinds of stupid, crazy stuff then. It's all joking, ha, 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 ha. That part makes me angry, so I did not include it in the talk. But the point is, they joke about it. Oh, April Fool, in a mainstream science journal, talking about ruins in Antarctica. They tell you the truth, but then they disguise it. Isn't that amazing? Can I get a big round of applause if you think this is amazing? Unbelievable. Then, the article that came out 2 days after, 1 day after we published Endgame 2, links to this. Hitler's Ghost Island, secret Nazi treasure hunter base in the Arctic, found by Russian scientists after being abandoned over 70 years when the crew was poisoned by bad polar bear meat. That'd be a pretty rough meal in the first place. I don't know. And it says, a top secret Nazi base in the depths of the Arctic has been found by the Russian scientists after more than 70 years. It's located in a remote island in Russian territory more than 600 miles from the North Pole. And here's a rusted shell, all these things. They have all these pictures of what they found there. So that's getting us ready that the same thing could be in south of the pole, the South Pole. We have William Tompkins now, who has come out as our big new whistleblower. Here he was as a young man, hired in World War II to debrief American scientists embedded in Nazi Germany's space program, including people that were working in Antarctica. And he confirmed that these ruins were known about all the way back in the late 1930s. They've had a long time to prepare for telling us the truth.
They've known about these ruins since 1930, and so did Hitler. Think about that. Hitler and his group, whoever flew down there, a German Nazi group flew down there, knew that they existed before the war ended. And they had developed a base before it had ended as a refuge spot that they knew mainstream people would not get to for maybe decades later. They beat mainstream governments to get into this maybe a decade or two earlier. So again, elite groups are always ahead of us on releasing stuff, doing stuff, planning stuff. This is pathetic, but it's true.
Which is really stunning. Now, what we're hearing from Corey is that not only is it Antarctica, they're finding that some of the ancient ruins on Earth have very technological things like portal devices actually buried inside the stones, including some of the oldest Sumerian stuff, and this is one of those examples. So we're going to have to probably protect this stuff when that comes out because people are going to want to tear them apart looking for technology. And they've been very quietly doing this with very advanced equipment to find these things and try to get them out before they tell us about this. But they're finding all kinds of cool stuff in there. And while looking at these ancient ruins, I came across this. Those are two ordinary humans of ordinary height, two men, holding, like slaves, an umbrella for a very tall human being. Isn't that interesting? A pre-Adamite. one of these elongated skull guys, one of the giants. There's more proof. One of the things Corey's intel has told us is that they are going to show us rooms that are just literally lined with gold, floors, walls, and ceilings with all this gorgeous inlay. And Corey actually got to see that stuff. And so there's this place, I believe it's in Indonesia, called Baodong, that has a very similar type of a look to it. Not exactly the same, but close. And people go there to pray, and of course all that gold is going to have amazing energy. It's going to be a very energetic spot. You can see how beautiful this is. Corey was picked up by a craft like this, and that's one of the ways that he got taken to Antarctica. This is from the MIC group, the Military Industrial Complex Secret Space Program. And when he was down there with the Anshar and with other things, this is a forensic reconstruction of what it looks like in one of the real bases. You got these triangular craft down there, all kinds of excavations going on. And then this is the art that we commissioned for Endgame 2. This is what they actually do. They're digging holes through the ice, and you see these buildings down there. So I'm going to zoom in selectively on certain parts of this. If you look carefully, you can see there's an obelisk up at the top in the ice. And then there's these ruins, which he said they do look like Pumapunku in Peru. And specifically, the briefing was that Pumapunku was sort of like an extraterrestrial UN. A lot of different groups met there. And this was very likely another place like that. These ruins, this is sort of what we're going to see when they first release it, something like this. You notice there's a bulldozer in there, and then they got a little tunnel in the back, and there's rails going up. And then when we go down from there, we see this little guy on the left. That's a steam blower. It generates steam, and they use that to melt the ice. And then you see on that wooden cart, they're hauling out the body of a mastodon. So they're finding lots of prehistoric animals underneath the ice. And they're also finding all these pre-Adamite bodies. Now, isn't it interesting that the Cabal, the largest object in Washington, D.C., is the Washington Monument, an obelisk, an Egyptian obelisk, which is an emulation of stuff that's over 2 billion years old that's all over our solar system and beyond. They still worship the same gods. They still have the same religion. They keep building the same structures in honor of the very oldest stuff they ever found. That's not an accident. Just like the Statue of Liberty is the female goddess Isis, her torch is the sacred mystery schools. They must keep the flame lit, just like in the Olympics. They always got to have the Olympic torch burning. They never let it go out. And then her book is the book of the sacred mystery teachings. And then the crown, the rays coming off her head, is the fact that she's ascended. She's a god or goddess. So they hide it out in the open with things like the Statue of Liberty, which is the female version, and the obelisk being the male version, because this is their religion. It's a mystery school religion. So
now listen to this. It's very important that we understand that they hide this stuff out in the open. We've never been taught it in schools. So again, this is very cunning and very deceptive, and it's very well known to them, but not known to us. This is the game that Satan and these Luciferian worshippers, these elite groups, these Illuminati, do. They know what's going on. We don't, and we're just pawns to them.
These pre-Adamites bred with people, regular people on Earth, and they had a whole different, there were different types of hybrids they made, and some of the hybrids were human-size height, but retained the elongated skulls and had less hair. And this includes Egyptian pharaohs. This is Akhenaten and Nefertiti's daughter, Meritaten. Notice she has no hair and a very elongated skull. I've talked about this extensively. There's the family of Akhenaten, Nefertiti, and their kids with all the pre-Adamite features. They were the survivors of this catastrophe after Atlantis. They didn't all die. Some of them lived in Europe and Asia. Some of them lived in the Americas. They didn't actually form back into contact with each other until approximately the 1600s or 1700s, based on ships that crossed the Atlantic. But they went into hiding. They were the gods in Mesoamerica as well, and then when the conquerors came, they fled into the jungles and underground bases they still had, and they hid out. And then they eventually migrated back over to Europe, and they all pretty much now seem to be living in the Vatican, but they still have warring factions. The beings that have been found under the ice are mummified. This is actually a real mummy. Not one of the pre-Adamites, obviously, but this is what this is kind of what you're going to see that they look like. And this is Pompeii, and so Pompeii, of course, is where volcanic gases of very high temperature flash burned everybody, and they immediately died, and their images were captured in the ash. And so this is real people that were captured that way, and so they're calling this Pompeii under ice. One of the crazy things, now this is a sculpture, okay, it's not real, but they find all kinds of chimeras. Half human, half animal hybrids, which is exactly what Edgar Cayce's readings said the Atlanteans were doing, and is part of what made them wicked and caused the flood.
Wow, this just becomes so creepy because of half humans, half animal, all this genetic manipulation and other foolishness. What a bunch of crap, but if it's true, we're going to get a real eyeful when this stuff comes out and when it's fully disclosed. If it is ever fully disclosed.
You're not supposed to do this. They were hybridizing human DNA with animals, and then they were creating these slaves that they used for work. And they were treated very, very badly. So some of them had a bull, the centaur. Yeah, it's funny, yeah. I mean, I put that in to make you laugh, but the point is, why do we have all these records of this stuff? Because people saw them. They were real. They all died out eventually. But for a time, these beings did exist. So we still have the records of them. When you actually go into the real stuff deep underground, this is the kind of things you see. These gorgeous pillars with light all up and down. And one of the things from Corey's briefing was that one of the plans that they have for partial disclosure is that they will tell us about ETs. And the first group they were planning on telling us about is called the Tall Whites. And this is what they look like right here. Charles Hall is the whistleblower who's gotten into this. Now they were hoping, this is more the cabal groups, hoping that they could introduce us to these guys, force us to learn a brand new language, that's the Tall White language, and force us to learn their religion, and then basically worship them as our gods. Good luck with that. I don't think that's going to work. But that's one of the things they hoped for. So this is brand new art that you're probably going to see it again tomorrow. Corey allowed me to use it for this talk. These are Anshar egg-shaped craft, the Anshar of the Inner Earth Alliance that we talked about last night. Nobody's ever seen this until right now. They're gigantic. Now look at the size of these eggs, and there's little stairwells going into them, and then there's people way, way down at the bottom. Okay? And I'm going to zoom in on those people even more. You can get a sense of the enormousness of these craft. Why is it not wanting to do that? Okay, well, there they go. Okay, let me back up again because I went through that too fast. So these are huge craft that are egg-shaped, obviously anti-gravity, and Corey was taken down there on an expedition, and this is what he saw. Over in the background, you have an excavation site, so we're going to zoom in on that first. The excavation site has trucks, steam blowers, and then you'll notice that what we're seeing here is some kind of obelisk or pyramid that's being steamed out of the ice. Notice the point of the pyramid. You see that? The white pyramid sticking up with the beams pointing at it and all the steam around it. That's what he was seeing. And then over here where the snow is on the bottom, we have people walking up out of the craft. Corey was one of them, and there's the building poking out. You see that corner on the right. That's the corner of a big stone megalithic building. And they had already been pulling out pre-Adamite bodies, and they'd laid them out on the ice because this is a new expedition. This is new archaeology they're doing here. So what they see there is these bodies of giants wearing these curious outfits, and Corey got to see them up close with the mummified look that I told you before, and he said these bodies were really thrashed. Because remember, these people died in a flood, and then if that's not bad enough, earthquake and flood, then they freeze and are frozen into ice, which becomes Antarctica. So this is what he saw when he was there, and nobody's ever seen this until right now. So all of this was fascinating enough on its own. And then I called up Pete Peterson, and I had a dialogue with him on the phone about what Corey had told me, but I didn't really want to tell him anything. I just said, what do you know about anything interesting going on in Antarctica? And boy, oh boy, did that open up the bottle, uncork the bottle, and pour up a nice big drink. Holy smokes. So the first thing that he told me when he started the briefing dealt with 15,000 human bodies. And this is a morbid but true thing that I'm authorized to tell you. I'm not really sure why, but let me get this pointer out of the way here. Put that down there. He was told that he was called and asked what to do for 15,000 dead bodies, and explained that they were casualties suffered after the Alliance was going after underground bases. So what this means is that the Alliance is to try to save the planet, to try to stop these people from trying to kill everybody with nukes or viruses or economic collapse or any of the things they're trying to do. The Alliance has been on an industrial scale getting everybody in these underground bases to either surrender or be wiped out. And some of them are getting wiped out. And so they call Pete up and they say, hey, Pete, you're the expert. We got 15,000 dead bodies. What should we do with them to get rid of them? And you got to understand, military guys can joke about stuff like this. So what he told me was that they've called in the Canadian Marines for some of these bases, and they've run through half a trailer of ammunition. So there's a big shooting war going on. This is the World War III. It's just all happening in these places we're not supposed to know about. It's going on right now. That's a great deal of damage. Half a trailer of ammunition is a ton of ammunition. It is set up so that individual soldiers do not know whether they fired real rounds or blanks. And he said this was also done in World War II to reduce psychological impact. Now, I've heard people think this is not true. Then he told them, okay, get an LST boat. It's a military boat. You can fit 120 Abrams tanks in one of these LST boats. So it's very large. Let me get this thing out of the way. 500 troops can fit in one of the boats. And you can sail the bodies out to sea, fit them up with concrete galoshes, and feed the sharks. So that was his brilliant idea about how to get rid of 15,000 bodies. So this is how the briefing starts. You can see we're already like really in the ozone layer here. Very strange stuff. And again, it's morbid, but this is a real war. And what they're doing is they're cleaning up all this stuff first before we ever hear about it, so that there's not going to be a whole lot of work left to do on the surface. And by the time we actually get disclosure, they've already solved most of the problems and the war has been won. Isn't that interesting? And that's a good thing. That's a good thing, because what that means is the rumors that we've heard over the years about the destruction of underground bases is true, and that it's now gotten to the point where the cabal is almost completely gone. There's just a few little remnants left, and they're being wiped out as we speak. It's amazing. And he's telling me this just a few days after it starts raining in California. And it's eliminated our drought. That's the Alliance too. I've been telling everybody that I know online and my friends, when we see it rain in California for days at a time, that's when we know the cabal's been defeated. And that's what's happening. It's fantastic. So he said that's been happening. This is Corey's confirmation. He said that people have been locking, this is what Corey said after I told him what Pete told me, people have been locking themselves inside these protected underground facilities. The Alliance is cutting through the doors with blowtorches. They're arresting people and removing them off the premises, but if they resist violently, then a shooting war results. And Marine Expeditionary Forces are clearing out the bases. One of the problems that happened, according to Pete and Corey, is that some of these Marines were not vetted out on extraterrestrials, and they go into these underground bases and they see 8-foot or even 10-foot, 12-foot tall reptilian, demonic-looking beings fighting against them with guns. And the psychological shock has been huge, so there's a lot of these soldiers that are now in counseling because they were shocked to see these non-human Dracos. Now, I started to ask him about the underground cities that he's talked about before, because this is where these people are hiding, that they're now going in and invading. He said a normal underground city will house 40 to 45,000 people. Some bases are there to protect people who aren't even there yet, meaning the bases are empty, and they plan on having people from the surface go down there to be saved from cataclysms. He said that they've got this Mount Timpanogos underground base where they've already set up his apartment. They're trying to get him to go down there, but he stays on the surface. They insisted that he have one 8 months ago. This was in January. And what they're planning on doing at some point is saying, hello, folks, guess what? The sun is changing. At 32,000 feet, you are now getting the equivalent of a chest x-ray in an airplane every 8 minutes. Now, they're not telling us this yet. So flying is becoming a problem. You're allowed 2 chest x-rays a year. They are hiring flight crews like they're going out of style. So apparently they're trying to keep this covered up, but people in flight crews that are on airplanes all the time are getting cancer a lot faster because they're getting all these x-rays. And this is because the sun is doing its thing. So, I'm trying not to travel more than I have to. I'm getting all these invitations to conferences, and after knowing this stuff, I'm like, you know what? I think I'm good. Take my little 2-hour flight to Boulder, and I'm happy. Once in a while. And it's a kind of a lower altitude flight anyway, so that's even better. They're trying to fly at lower altitudes now to prevent this from being worse. Now, I asked him a question. Benjamin Fulford recently reported that all of the U.S. aircraft carriers had been brought back into port at the same time. And he said, yes, that's true. This is happening in Portsmouth, Newport News, Savannah, North Carolina, Camp Lejeune. I don't know how to spell that, but that's phonetic. Lejeune, okay. Camp Lejeune, small bases in Alaska, San Francisco, Long Beach, which is down here below LA. All the ships are in. A lot of them were out because of what is going on in the Middle East right now, this war with the Alliance versus the Cabal and ISIS, which is the Cabal's cutout army.
You need to understand that the military, U.S. military, is involved in this battle with the Alliance and against the elite. It's incredible stuff. Now, he's talking about taking 6 months, 24-day work to replenish these carriers. They're massive.
Army. It takes 6 months of 24-hour-a-day work to replenish a full aircraft carrier. You can house 7,000 people on these carriers, and there are 2 new ones now that can hold 12,000. You have to fly the planes in to these aircraft carriers from military bases, then they have to land on the carrier. You don't roll them in, you fly them in. The reason that these carriers are all being called in now is to load on weapons that we've never admitted to, and that they weren't going to tell us about these weapons for the next 100 years. But
now we're pushing their buttons, and they're getting into weapons that we weren't supposed to know about for the next 100 years. Weapons that they've back engineers from alien ships and spaceships that have been captured and reversed engineered.
But disclosure is moving forward so fast now that they're actually going to tell us about this much sooner. You see now why I wanted to leak all this intel for the first time right here on stage with the security guard? Okay? This is very sensitive intel, and you guys are the very first people to ever hear this. Isn't that awesome? So he said this was January 12th, and he said last night Maurice Cotterell was on coast and admitted that he was aware of 3-mile-long flying aircraft carriers just like the ones we see in the Avengers and in Captain America.
So they got these flying aircraft carriers that evidently really exist. It's just unreal.
And he said they just finished the R&D on these flying aircraft carriers, and in order to service them, because they're in the sky, they used F-22s and F-35 airplanes. So they're flying these airplanes up to these aircraft carriers that are cloaked, and they're getting ready to tell us about that stuff too, because they built new ones. The F-22s and F-35s have had so many runs in order to properly do the work that's needed to go up and down from these things that now the planes are already wearing out, even though they were brand new when they started. So this is a huge effort that's being made. Now, what are they going to have? They're going to announce weapon systems that shoot laser solitons. The laser soliton will travel forever until it hits something solid, and this is part of the technology they need to actually take down Draco ships, which now the Earth Alliance has. The soliton can go through an 8-foot hull and penetrate directly into nuclear warhead racks. They can get rid of anything. They can shoot it down into the ground, take care of anything they need to take care of. They have things that will take aircraft out of the air. Russia has a nasty plane now, and he thought it was called the S-23. This is all part of the briefing, and it goes on. Finally, I get to the subject. Do you know anything about ancient ruins being discovered in Antarctica? And I didn't say anything else. And he doesn't go online. He didn't see my website. He didn't know that I had leaked anything about this. This was totally original. And he says, everybody's been there. Obama, Trump. Whoa. He let that one go. Buzz Aldrin. How did Buzz get altitude sickness, he asks me. I heard he said, holy shit, 7 times before he reached an altitude of 200,000 feet. 200,000 feet. Yeah, that's way outside the Earth. Because the acceleration is so fast, he'd never seen anything like it, and they had a window for him, so he flipped out. They went around the moon, saw the back of the moon, and then he saw all this stuff on the back of the moon, all these civilizations, and it totally tripped him out. Then they come back towards the Earth, and they go around one of these floating space station aircraft carriers I was just telling you about, and then they tipped the wings. The plane goes like this, whoop, and it shows it's like a hello to the aircraft carrier. Gave him a wing wave. So this is what ended up leading to him having a heart attack. Obama was told, you too can go through a leaf grinder if you say a word, even if you breathe it at night while you're asleep. And this is, they talk to Obama like this all the time. It's really sad. The president does not get a lot of respect, to say the least. And this is where it's funny. And this is what he said, you know, take it for what you will. He said, that's the real Obama and not one of the stand-ins. The real Obama has been locked up for almost 6 months now. Yeah, isn't that weird? And this gets into the idea of potentially cloning people, and that you can have clones that are programmed to be like the original or lookalikes. We don't really, there's different ways they can do this. I don't know if this is true, but, you know, I just listened to him, and I'm telling you what he said. So you can take it for what you will. Now, he talks about the craft. Oh, the C is there because when I post things in, I have to put a character there in order to make it so it actually looks white and proper. So I forgot to delete that one. I apologize. He said they have planes, and this is his funny way of talking. It's not spaceships. He says they have planes that fly regularly to Mars and the moon. He's admitting this now. I say, planes? Not exactly the same kind of planes you're thinking of in the public eye. I said, are you talking about the black triangles with the dome on the top? Yes, that is one type. Then we go on. And the darts, and I explain what the darts are. That's what Corey's been describing. We had images of it last night, if you want to see that talk. He said that is another type. I can't mention anything unless you already know what it is. So basically, I have to know the answer first, and then he'll confirm that it's true, and that's how he's able to stay alive. He can't tell me anything I didn't already know. Now, this was really cool. This made me feel amazing. He told me, and I'm typing as fast as I can what he's saying, you, David, are considered a hero to the Alliance. Isn't that awesome? And for God's sake, let me drink some water here. He said the people in the Alliance would love to disclose the things that you, David, are disclosing, but when they try, they end up making fat sharks. They get fed to the sharks with concrete galoshes. So they love the fact that I'm out there. He said, David, there are so many people who wish they could be on this stage. Well, let's say he was here now. So many people that would wish they could be on this stage tonight doing the presentation that I'm doing for you right now. And it gets to be me. So that's pretty freaking awesome. So thank you, guys. Thank you. Okay, let's go on. So let's get back to this thing about the aircraft carriers. What exactly are they loading onto these ships? He said they have weapon systems that weren't set to be disclosed for 100 years. That's what they're loading in carriers and airplanes. Is it stuff that will look like flying drones but full-sized? And I, of course, you know, he's not going to tell me unless I already have the answer. Corey had already told me this. He didn't know that. He totally confirmed it. He said yes. And then he goes on to say they have dozens of prototypes of 3 different size drones. They have been using actual drones, the real ones, in movies for almost 4 years now. And this includes the movie Edge of Tomorrow featuring Tom Cruise. That movie had real technology in it. And it looks very real in the movie. It's like, wow, you know, they built a lot of sets for this movie. And they have that thing, it's like a metallic robotic suit that he wears. Also in the movie Avatar. So the movie Avatar is not fiction. It's disclosing the space program, going to other planets and mining and having indigenous populations that they then wipe out in order to get the materials they need. That movie is true, and the technology in it is true. And he said to me, sometimes they run out of money on these film budgets, and instead of trying to build the thing, they just haul in one of the real ones from an underground base and film it. It's crazy. Those were real units. So this is something Corey sent me. It's got actually 8 propellers on it, 4 on the top, 4 on the bottom. It is a powered drone. And so one of the things that Corey's disclosure has said is that they are planning on releasing these craft to the public eye soon. And it's going to start with propellers, and then when they get to the point that they declassify anti-gravity, then they're just going to take off the propellers. They're already built modularly to take off the propellers and stick on the anti-gravity cells. So this is going to be something that we're going to see very soon as part of the disclosure.
So this means they're already using anti-gravity cells. They're going to take off the propellers, and they're going to do this in stages so we don't totally freak out, supposedly.
So again, if this stuff really starts to happen, you heard it here first. Why would all the other stuff I'm saying then be wrong? This is how we're going to get full disclosure. This is why we were told, tell the people everything. Because we're not going to wait 50 years for this, so that these guys are more worried about that they don't ever want to possibly get in trouble, while we have things that need urgent attention on Earth right now. So full disclosure. Absolutely. And the briefing goes on. He starts to describe these 3 different craft and other things. He said, we have an airplane. Well, that's what he likes to call it. There's an airplane that flies up to 200,000 feet at a speed of Mach 12 or 14. That's what actually caused Buzz Aldrin to say, holy shit, 7 times. It doesn't require any fueling. Most of these craft go and hide behind a bigger craft, meaning like a space station. These space stations, or platforms as he calls them, are camouflaged from outer space at the bottom. So you can't see them from the surface of the Earth. And this is how he describes it works. Stars move across these craft at night at random and different brightnesses. It looks like there are clouds in the sky below these craft from virtually every angle you could see on the entire surface of the Earth. Let's say that the space station is a disk that's 1/2 mile in diameter. They make a cloud beneath it that's 5 miles in diameter, and they also back project on it what it looks like behind the craft. And these technologies work 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So there's all this stuff in the sky right now, back projecting holographic images of the stars behind them, and you either see that or you see the cloud. And they're already there. They're just getting ready to turn off the cloaking and show us what they got. Isn't that going to be crazy? It's amazing stuff. Cloaking is very widely used. Then we get into Antarctica and beings. This is where it gets really interesting. Have you heard anything about giant
So we've used different types of cloaking technology for a long time. And this is all going to be disclosed too. This is just mind-blowing.
pre-Adamite bodies being found in the Antarctic ice, complete with elongated skulls? This is a very loaded question, but I want to see what he's going to say when I throw this at him. Yes. And then he goes on to say, not only did they find dead ones, but they found living ones that are in stasis chambers. And these are new excavations. They estimate the stasis beings have been there for at least 800,000 years that we know of. Now, he had written all this down. He has diabetic neuropathy, and he doesn't always remember dates very well, and his handwriting isn't necessarily readable to himself. And this was a briefing. He was writing things down as fast as he could, and they said to him, we want you to tell David this stuff so I can share it with you. Isn't that cool? So it appears that his 5 looks like an 8, because later on I said, is it possible that it was 500,000 years? He said, yeah, because, you know, I wrote it in a funny way, and they told me so much stuff I couldn't remember everything. They wanted me to get this to you. I've done that. But I'm just telling you exactly how he said it at first. So this does appear to be 500,000 years ago. Now that's freaking crazy, because what that means is that some of the people from the original Mars civilization, all the way back 500,000 years ago, put themselves in stasis chambers that work so well that some of the surviving 500,000-year-old stasis chambers are still there in Antarctica inside these ships that crashed. And then I tell Corey, and he's like, you weren't supposed to know that. He was shocked. Well, guess what, dude? Pete's people are telling me that they want me to know that. Your people are telling me, oh, don't tell David. Well, there's 2 different factions. Not everybody's apparently coordinating on this. They were hiding from the Anunnaki as well as other people. The Anunnaki here, he's referring to Draco-reptilians, of course. As Anunnaki just means extraterrestrial, there's different types. So then, this is where it gets really amazing. Corey had not leaked this to me. They found a gigantic mothership under the ice with a new satellite that uses a lower-than-infrared imaging system. They found a man-made object, without any question, buried 3 miles below the surface. It was about 30 miles in diameter and looked like a craft. Now, this is where he gets really interesting. How did they get down to this craft? Now that they find it, and it fairly was recently apparently that they found it, how did they get down there? He said they made some things that shot large plastic bags of water down that 3-mile chute as they dig the chute, and then they flash boil it with microwaves, and they eliminate the first 40 feet of ice on top of these things of snow. So in other words, the bag gets dropped, they have very high-powered microwaves, they hit the bag with the waves, suddenly it turns into steam, and the steam evaporates the ice, and that's how they dig down to the craft. I explained this to Corey, he said, wow, you weren't supposed to know that either. Then they followed it with pictures. So they start taking pictures of the craft. Obviously, we're not seeing them. They found round ports, rectangular ports, square ports, knobs, antenna bumps, sensor bumps, telescope bumps. This was a huge thing. It was obviously a craft. Craft were taking off from 2 different directions, the front and the back of the mothership. It had little holes in it where craft would go in and out. The craft would come in from 2 directions, and they would cross over one on top of the other inside the craft on conveyor belts. So this was a little bit more complex than what he explained. I'll give it to you in more detail. He said some are on the top half of the craft, another on the bottom. So what this means is the craft has a hole on one side, a hole on the other side. There's a conveyor belt with sockets in the shape of different types of UFOs. The UFO literally drops into the craft, it sits in the socket nicely, and then the conveyor belt moves forward and another socket shows up, and then that one pops in, and it goes on and on like this. And what was amazing was that I go back to Corey with all this stuff. Well, let's get to that in a second. First, he had more to say. Those things, these motherships, will take craft that we've already seen and call UFOs, and they actually can hold them inside. The motherships are set to hold a craft that would be the shape and size of sliding panels that slide around on this thing. Sometimes, I was typing so fast, that one isn't very clear. But he's talking about the sliding conveyor belt. The thing on the inside goes in, the socket goes in, and then it rotates by 90 degrees and turns into the conveyor belt. So it kind of pops out like little egg holders. Now you've got a big hole on the side. They take off out of the front and go in the back. And then I say, I have other intel that suggests they found a craft that had crash-landed near ancient builder race ruins in Antarctica, and that they had to cannibalize their craft in order to build a settlement. Have you heard anything like that? And he said yes, he confirmed that was true. And then he said they also found an active city of 35 to 40,000 people who were still alive inside those craft after all this time, still living in there. Isn't that crazy? That was the big thing everyone went down to look at, and they wanted to meet some of these new people. We apparently are revered by them. Corey then confirmed this was true, but said that they actually are afraid of us because of our warlike nature. They consider us to be the relatives of their great 800,000-year-old ancestors, which again, he had the number wrong, it's 500,000 years old. But we are like long distant cousins, and so they see us as their long-lost family, and they're very excited about that. Everything we have in still orbit, meaning all the classified space stations and stuff, is now hanging over Antarctica and looking to the other side to look for all these artifacts, because now it's like fully active. This wasn't known about before. It's fairly new. So, Corey then, I go to him and I say, Corey, did you hear about a 30-mile wide mothership? And he said, yes. And then he tells me that actually there was 3 of them that have been discovered. And the code names for these ships, believe it or not, are the Nina, the Pinta, and the Santa Maria. It's the original remnant of the fallen angels, the Luciferian people, the pre-Adamites. They're tall with elongated skulls that turned into what we now call the Illuminati, that are actually still running the planet, or they were up until this alliance thing happened. Corey confirms the 3 motherships. He confirms the sockets. Well, he didn't know about the sockets, actually. That was new to him. But he confirmed that they held multiple spaceships inside, and those spaceships could go outside the Earth's atmosphere, but they didn't have enough fuel to travel outside the solar system. So they stayed within our solar system, and then the Draco were warring with them, so they really didn't leave the Earth. But he said some of the craft that were found inside the motherships were like the Vimanas, and they looked like depictions that we see in Vedic artwork, and some of them look like what we see in Tibet, the stupas. Very interesting. So we have these ruins down there, and Corey has said, and Pete has said, that the plan is that they wanted to roll this out slowly. They start with a very conventional thing of it's just ruins and it's just humans. They didn't want us to see the giants right away because that's too much, too fast. But now I'm telling you about that part. And then eventually they reveal that they have a secret space program. They reveal the craft that they used to fly Buzz Aldrin around the backside of the moon, causing him to have a heart attack. Then they say, oh, isn't it interesting? We found ruins like this also on Mars and on the moon. They look very similar, which I showed you pictures of already. Then they're opening it up to full disclosure, and at some point we start finding out about ETs. And the reason why they're doing this is that this is the cosmic history of the Illuminati. This is what they believe to be their lineage, that they came from the exploded planet and from Mars and from Saturn. That's why it's called the Cult of Saturn or Kronos. And they use the Saturn logo all over the place. The Rolling Stones have that album, Their Satanic Majesty's Request. Yes, that was the title. And it has Saturn right sitting there on the top in the image. So now I'm going to summarize this for you. It's a little after 10:30, so I didn't run that far over. Evidently, this is what Pete was saying as a summary, and this is his own words that I transcribed. Evidently, it will change our entire world forever, just knowing the information. My problem and your problem, and for the people in this audience, and the military knew that they were going to be talking to you when he said this, my problem and your problem is, for us, this is normal stuff. It's cool, but we can handle it. We don't realize what a huge impact this will have on most people. We may also end up adding things to what we hear based on our own personal beliefs, and we need to avoid that. So, to roll this thing out, I want to show you again, if you didn't see last night's talk or the visuals on that screen weren't very good, now that we got the right screen, what we're going to see when we're finally allowed into many of these gorgeous underground cities like the one that's in Antarctica, and there's many of them. Now, this is stuff that Corey found online that looks very similar to what he actually saw, so probably whoever did this art was getting some kind of telepathic download based on the reality of what's down there, and they see this psychically and then they draw it. Or maybe they have another lifetime or some kind of, maybe they're being visited. Who knows? This is an example of what it looks like inside the underground areas. They do have caves and vegetation and running water, and forms of light caused by light-emitting bacteria on the surface. We see stuff like this. We see caves with water, and then they hollow out those areas and they build facilities in them, and that's where they live, these underground beings. This is another one that he said looks fairly close to what he actually saw. Again, this was kind of randomly done by an artist, telepathically most likely. Another example of an artist getting really close without actually having seen it, telepathically, most likely. And then this is one of the early commissions that we got. It wasn't entirely accurate. There isn't really enough stuff there. There's too much rock. But it was fairly close. It was the first attempt we made. And some of the new stuff, this is one of the brand new ones that he just commissioned. And nobody's seen it before, except for last night. This is the Anshar craft. You see the bell craft. You see the cigar-shaped craft. You see these huge pillars filled with lights because people are living in those pillars of rock. There's cities along the ground. There's domes with glowing light. And the light is like opaque so that you can't see inside. Gives them some privacy. Then you also have these egg-shaped craft that I showed you before. And that's down there on the right, the egg-shaped craft. Here is an image of Corey with Kari standing in front of what it actually looks like. Now notice, interestingly, how similar this is to what those people telepathically downloaded psychically that it actually looks like. This is another illustration, and I had to really level with him. I'm like, Corey, how real is this? Because this looks freaking fantastic. It's so high-tech. It's so crazy. All these domes with all these lights on them. There must be millions of people living in there. He said, yes. This is a very close rendition of what I actually saw, and it's incredibly vast, and there are millions of people living down there already, and there's room for many more in certain areas that they've made for us, because there are going to be problems with the sun that will require us to relocate. And so it's kind of like Santa Claus, right? He's got the naughty list and he's got the good list. And you really probably want to be on the good list. Because if you're on the surface of the earth, it may not be very nice, to say the least. It could be another Atlantean kind of thing. So this is all part of this ascension idea. I believe Corey is a harbinger. It's not stuff that's only happening to him. You're not only seeing this on Cosmic Disclosure, and boy, I wish whatever was happening to Corey would happen to me. No, this is going to become our reality. We're going to get tours of these places. Maybe not where all the Anshar are, but they have other ones that will look very cool that we'll be able to go to. And so, what I'm concluding with now is a statement that we are on the threshold of potentially some of the most amazing releases of knowledge in the entire recorded history of humanity. This type of a disclosure is as significant as the advent of someone like Jesus coming on earth if he actually did, in fact, do the things that the Bible says that he did. It's as significant as what happened to Muhammad, if you believe what's in the Quran. It's as significant as what happened to Moses if you believe the Old Testament. It's as significant as what happened to Krishna if you read the Mahabharata and the Drona Parva and other books like that, the Vedas. It's as significant as the Tibetan ascended masters like Padmasambhava reaching rainbow body and ascending, and 160,000 documented cases of that happening. What is going to occur, if this is true, is so vast, it's so amazing, it's almost hard to imagine. You can be a radiant light and transform the world with your love. And you can know in the greatest sense that indeed you are the light. You are the love. You are the one infinite creator now and
all I know, and I'm going to leave this here, I'm going to give you a link to this site. It's over almost 2.5 hours of information. All I know is this stuff is coming out, and if it is true and if it is accurate from these whistleblowers, a lot of things are going to change on what's coming out. Military black ops, coercion, and alien information, and stuff about what's on the moon, what's on Mars, what's on Saturn, what's on Venus, what's been going in with these space stations, what's been going on with these black op military and corporations. All this stuff is connected, and it's been going on for now 70 years or longer with us as a nation and people since the Second World War. If part of this is accurate, or most of this is accurate, it's going to be life-changing for a lot of people when it is released. And I say these things to keep an open mind and to be careful about what you're being told, but also be open-minded, because this stuff is going to change history books, religion view, understanding, education, technology, income, financial, global markets, world governments, education, corporations. Many things are going to change as this information and technology is released. And we will have a new world and a new society as this comes out and is being used. And I say these things in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.